If you wish to ask any questions this afternoon, we're going to be quite a small group. There's a few people that wanted to come along that may join us during the session, so you may see some people arriving. If you want to ask any questions, then in the Teams meeting bar, you've got what's called a conversation, and that's a little speech bubble. You can add any questions in there, and I'll do my best to answer them when I come back across to you. Additionally, you can just unmute your mic and you can speak with me, and we'll have various pause points during the training where we can discuss each learning tool as we go through them. We've got a few to look at this afternoon. Training is going to be approximately an hour, but there may be some additional questions at the end that make the session stretch a little bit longer. If you need to leave before that, don't worry, you'll be able to access the recording after the meeting, and Tiana, who's here from our team today, will share the link for that recording for you in the chat at the end of the session. So without any further delay, let's have a look at what we're up to today. So the whole focus is to use learning tools to improve access to education. Microsoft have many of them, and they are really useful for just breaking down what can be an inaccessible resource or a learning experience and just allowing the pupil or the student to get into it more easily. And one of the things we are also going to do for you today is we're going to offer you the chance to become a Microsoft Innovative Educator, or an MIE. So at the end of the session, we will give you a code for the Microsoft Education Center, and the Microsoft Education Center is on screen now. If you open up a web browser and use your search engine to find Microsoft Education Center, you'll come to a screen that looks like the one in the picture on the computer there. And in the top right-hand corner, there will be a sign-in button. And on that sign-in button, you can either create an account or you can log in with your school account for your Office 365 account. And then you can redeem a code we'll give you at the end of the session. This means you get the equivalent of 1,000 points, which would have been self-study points learning Microsoft Learning Tools, and you'll instantly be given the qualification of becoming a Microsoft MIE. So I'll just give you a moment to find the Microsoft Education Center and get yourself logged in, ready to redeem that code. So just 1 minute to do that. Okay, we'll continue now. You've had a chance to log in and make sure you're in the Microsoft Education Center. One of the benefits of today going in and redeeming those points is that you will also be able to go back to the course. So anything that we are covering this afternoon, you're thinking, just like to know a little bit more about that, you'll be able to get back in, and then it often leads to you finding other courses that might be of interest to you and being able to undertake those as a bit of CPD or self-study. For some of you here this afternoon and you've never seen this before, the certified MIE or Microsoft Innovative Educator often leads on to other qualifications, and I can see we've got a couple of people here that then completed the next step, which is the Microsoft Innovative Education Expert, and they are promoting how to use technology in their schools. And I know certainly one person here is thinking of becoming a Microsoft Showcase school. So we'll start you on that journey this afternoon, but all the resources for supporting this session are on there in the Microsoft Education Centre. The agenda for this afternoon is to have a look at the tools you've got built into Windows 10 and Office 365. We will spend a little bit of time examining Immersive Reader. That's in many places. Then we'll discuss the benefits of using Office Lens. We'll have a little look at the Maths tool. We will see how the translation tool can help with EAL and giving access to resources in different languages. We'll then touch upon PowerPoint and what it's got in the way of narrator and presenter coach, and also explore how captions can be used to scroll subtitles under the screen. All of that will be then encapsulated in how to personalize learning and make it more accessible. The aim of the learning tools from Microsoft is to increase the inclusivity of the classroom. I appreciate that graphic on the right hand side is a little bit small, but what we're meant to show there is that all areas of the curriculum can be helped by using these tools, and they aren't exclusive to a particular subject or a particular teacher, that everyone will find in some way they can adapt them and bring them into their practice. And it may help you support a group of pupils, maybe your entire class, depending on which setting you're working in, but they're free and they're part of the Office 365 package. So what we want to do is show you how to use them. Something that's published quite regularly from a person in the Microsoft Education team called Mike Tholson is the grid that we have on screen. What it shows you is all the different tools down the left-hand side in the blue strip, and then the strips across the middle show you just which applications in Office 365 or Windows 10 that you can find them in. It's growing all the time, and if you've got any other programs that you wish to have, for instance, Immersive Reader included in, that you can always give feedback on the feedback tabs in the web apps, or in, if you've got Office 2019, it's there too. If they get enough requests for something, Microsoft will develop it. It won't fall on deaf ears. There's a link at the bottom there where you can find a copy of that flyer, aka.microsoft/learning tools flyer, and you'll be able to get a copy of that directly and understand which applications and features are there in Windows or in Office 365. Whatever the learning needs of the pupils or students that you work with, the accessibility tools will be there to support those. Now, there may be specific tools that work with particular learning needs, but what we're trying to reinforce here is that there will be something for everyone, depending on who you're working with, whether it's adult learners, young pupils, whatever your age you're working with, there will be a learning tool support that. And if there's not, again, use the feedback, or if it doesn't work in quite the way that you need for your particular role in a school, then make sure that you tell Microsoft, because they will develop if there's enough demand for something. With the learning tools, we will look at how three things mesh together quite nicely. So Immersive Reader is, as I said, is pretty much across everything in Office 365 and Windows 10, but it links quite heavily with PowerPoint, and the fact that captioning or subtitles captioning is rolling out now more across Teams and PowerPoint, and also Stream, where someone might be talking in one language, but you can get subtitle captions across the bottom of the screen in another language. The inclusive classroom that we're going to explore this afternoon is split into 4 areas. So the reading, the writing, maths and communication. And what we'll do is we'll start with reading first this afternoon. It really then focuses on 4 pillars of the philosophy behind developing Microsoft learning tools, and often it's backed by larger organizations that go away and they conduct quite in-depth research. So there's various dyslexia associations around the world that have contributed and regularly meet in forums with Microsoft to ensure that these tools are developed. The features of Immersive Reader we'll look at first is that things can be read out loud for the people using them. You can change colors of backgrounds, you can change all font stylings, you can pretty much translate into a lot of common languages, and you also get factors built in like a picture dictionary. So without any further delay, let's move across and have a look at the real thing. I'm just going to swap screens for you and move through. Just moving across now. Remember, if you get any questions that come to you during the session, if you want to add them in, please do pop them in the chat. I will come back and check those from time to time, and we can get those from there. It's just syncing up to the window. Okay, so what you should see there is a PowerPoint slide. So as I said, Immersive Reader is in pretty much everything. If I opened up, let's say, Teams itself, in fact, I might swap over and take you to another Teams to show you this. One moment, I'll just swap over screens. Immersive Reader tends to get used a lot in Teams itself because of when you're delivering distance learning, you may not be able to do with a pupil, or you might have parents at home that are thinking, well, how on earth do I get to a particular resource or convert it? Well, the beauty is it cuts down your workload and it will allow you to produce a resource once, and then that resource can be adapted to suit the needs of the individual with the Immersive Reader tool. So the Immersive Reader tool is through all areas of Teams, and said through all areas of Office 365, and you'll be able to get into that by just clicking the Immersive Reader logo. That is the picture of the book with the speaker over it, so keep an eye out for that. And it's also within tools inside of different areas of Teams itself. Just getting Teams to reload a moment. It seems to have had a funny moment, but we will be in there in just a second. Just coming back up. Almost there. There we go. Now it's back up. Swap windows now to that one. What you'll see is when you first arrive in your Office 365, the landing page, and then, for instance, we'll go to Teams and use that as an example of where to find Immersive Reader. I'm using Teams in the web browser here. This is Microsoft Edge browser. You can use Teams just as happily in the app if you've got it installed on your computer. If you were going to be posting in Teams, so let's say that you're posting information to pupils or you're posting information to staff, some of those posts might be a bit text dense, or they may not necessarily be in the language that that person wishes to access them in. So that's where Immersive Reader comes in. And as soon as Teams loads up here this afternoon, it's taking its time. I think my broadband might be suffering. We will be able to show you where that tool is. Here it comes now. So I'll go into my primary classroom, and then there may be a post here with some information. So it could be a post that I've made about making sure that you are logged in for the live lesson in the afternoon. When you hover over the three dots often hide things. Those three dots can help you to find additional operations. So in here, there is the translate, which we'll be looking at later on to translate into other languages, but that's where you can find Immersive Reader, for instance, in the post section. If you click Immersive Reader, it will then take that post in Teams and it will convert it into an Immersive Reader view. And when you get in there, you can change all different aspects of the text. So instead of it being in a very busy environment where you've got lots of posts around you, what the Immersive Reader does is it takes away all of that and it will bring it just into that individual post. The same would work with other elements of Teams itself, whether you're setting assignments or using OneNote class notebook. So as you'll be able to see here now, that was the individual post we started with in Teams itself, and then it's here and it will be able to be read to me. So if I press the play button and I'm at home as a parent supporting a pupil, or I'm a pupil and I want to adjust it, and it will read it out loud to me. So even if the text is at a level that's too high for me, I can have it read to me. You've got tools up here in the top right hand corner, and that can change the way that the text we've got on screen is displayed for me. You've got text preferences. So if you were visually impaired and you needed a slightly larger font, you can drag it and that will increase the font size you've got available to you, or you can decrease it if there's too much on screen. So you choose the font size that's a comfort level for you. You can have increased spacing between words, or you can decrease it and have it more tightly compact. You can change fonts as well. So if you didn't like the Comic Sans, you can move back to Calibri, but a lot of people tend to like Comic Sans because it looks more like handwriting. Again, if I was visually impaired and I needed a pale green background, I can adjust that, or maybe it's a pale blue background, whatever I need, I can have that adjusted to suit me as an individual, and it won't affect any of the others in the class. It's just going to be my view that's adjusted here. Down the bottom, you can turn off the formatting that I inputted it as a teacher, and you can have an unformatted version. That tends to work better with big blocks of text rather than the small sentence that I've got here. You've also got grammar tools in the middle, and the grammar tools can highlight different spag elements of the text. So you could turn nouns on and off. So you can, when I turn it on, nouns come up there in purple writing. I could also have that labeled up. So now you can see I've got an N for nouns and V for verbs, and adjectives are labeled there. So you can switch those on and off as you wish, and you can also change colors on those if again somebody has a problem with, they've got some form of color blindness, they can't see the colors on screen. You can choose colors that make sense to them. The final tab here is your reading preferences. If you have a pupil or student with dyslexia and there's too much text on screen as there is, you can apply a line focus. Then that will always focus on the line that you're reading or that's being read to you if you press the play button. Switch that off again. You've got picture dictionaries that can be displayed on screen. So if you find a word and you want to see what the pictorial version of it is, there is a pictorial version. So maybe it's make. That visual dictionary is there inside of here, and it's all part of Immersive Reader, but it will also read the individual word. Down the bottom, this is where you can choose your language. So if you wanted to have it displayed in different language, maybe we've got, let's say, some Finnish children that have come along. You can have it by word, or you can apply it to the whole document, and then it will convert the whole document into Finnish. Or if you want to, you can go back to the individual word, and when you click on the word, you then get the Finnish version versus the English version, and then they're in the text all in one place. So you've got lots of different ways that you can get more access to the text on screen, and there's absolutely no problem with that affecting anybody else's view. That only then applies to the individual person that's there. If you want to come back out of Immersive Reader, you press the arrow on the left, and it will come back out, and then you're in the view that you were in there. And the same would go for things like assignments. If you were in an assignment in Teams, you can get the Immersive Reader in there as well. So you've got lots of different ways to use Immersive Reader across Teams, but also using that grid that I displayed previously across the whole of Office 365 and also in parts of Windows. Before I move on, I appreciate there's quite a bit there to take on in this part of the presentation. Is there any questions at all about Microsoft Learning Tools in relation to Immersive Reader? Feel free to pop the question in the chat, or you're welcome to just unmute and speak with me if that's easier. No? Okay. I'll swap back over to the slides so that we can continue through this afternoon. Let's change that view over there. So Immersive Reader itself is, as I said, found in many common areas of Office 365. Those are some of the frequently used apps, particularly in education. You can even have it work on web pages if you're using the Edge browser. So it's one of the advantages of using the Microsoft Edge browser over other browsers. It's even inside of Microsoft Minecraft Education Edition, which you don't often think of, it will be there, but it is in there as well. Microsoft aren't particularly precious about this. They have readily shared those resources with other third-party companies. So you can see if you've got a product that you buy into that's maybe from Oxford University Press and it's outside of Microsoft, well, you'll quite readily find that the Immersive Reader tool and icon is embedded in those websites or those pieces of software as well. So that you've got more of a uniformed experience for people in school. And if you know that you've subscribed to a platform that's owned by Oxford University Press, that you can just jump in there and there's familiarity for the pupils and the students you're working with. So we're going to move on from Immersive Reader. So we will now have a look at Office Lens. Office Lens, I've got a little animation on screen of a phone. Is an app, it's free. You can hold the phone over text. So I've used this whether walking around a classroom and teaching, but I've also used it at home to scan excerpts from books. It can also read to you, as it's just doing there, and it's got Immersive Reader built in as well. So once you've captured that text using Office Lens, you can use all of the same tools I've just showed you to adjust the text on the screen. It's also, because it's free to download either from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store, you can get your pupils or students to download it at home, and they can go on tablets, and it can do the translation to other languages as well. So it may be an English text is scanned, but it can translate into that other language. So there's lots and lots of benefits of using that Immersive Reader. If you've got it on your phone, you could also use it for scanning in work, and it will capture a page in their book. And if they've done something at home and it's a piece of distance learning work, certainly for this week, it will change next week, they could scan that and they could quickly reattach it into a PowerPoint presentation or drop it into Teams, into posts, and then send it back. So the Office Lens app is really good. It's very useful. Recently updated with some new features as well. So you'll be able to go and get that from whichever store that you use. Something else that's extremely useful, it's called PowerPoint Live. You'll need to have the most recent version of PowerPoint. That's either Office 2019, or you can use it in the online version of PowerPoint. It's called a web app. So it opens up as a tab in your browser from Office 365. You could also get this in the downloaded desktop version of Office 365 that installs on your computer, but it won't work in any earlier versions of Office. So if you've got Office 2016 or earlier, you'll need to get your IT support to upgrade you in order to use this. But PowerPoint Live allows you to share the slides. So I've got one there at the top of the screen there that shows you about 21st century learning skills. That's a slide I had in my deck that I was sharing with students. But because they had the PowerPoint Live app running on their phone or on their device in school, whether it's a laptop, a Chromebook, it will also give them subtitles underneath the slides as to what's on screen. So you can use that and you can get into it using a QR code. And we'll look at that in a bit more in depth at the in the second half of this training session. Right, moving through. So those tools that I showed you at the beginning, the PowerPoint, the Teams, and also the Stream, which will show you, Stream is a place where you can host your videos and you can insert them into Teams. All of those have that subtitling capacity and the auto caption, so that what I'm saying, for instance, now would come up on the screen. Next, we'll have a look at writing, and in writing, there's various ideas that you can use there. In Word itself, there are lots of tools that can be used to scan text and then convert it into different languages. You can pick those up by, I'm just going to admit someone into the meeting. You can pick those up by going to the area that's shown there in the highlighted window. I'm just going to let somebody in. But you again will need the latest version of Office to pick those up, and then you can translate the Word document into that same thing. So on the ribbon at the top, you are going to need to go to the option on the right hand side that says dictate, but what you can do is you can dictate in those languages and it will convert it over. You'll also need to add some settings in Windows 10. So if you go to your start bar down in the bottom left hand corner, it looks like a little window. There's a gear or a cog, and then you can go straight into Windows 10 settings, for instance, you can enable typing options, which means that you can have prompts on screen for suggested spellings. If you know that someone struggles with finding spellings, there's an on-screen dictionary. It could also come up on screen where it reads the words. So there's lots of accessibility tools built into Windows 10 as well. They aren't available in Windows 7, so you will need to make sure that they are there in Windows. You've got Windows 10, but they've been there since October 2018. So it just means that there's another way to add features in that you wouldn't necessarily have, and they're not going to cost you anything because they're just part of Windows 10. With maths, particularly in OneNote, there's something called a maths tool. And what you can do is you can insert an equation on screen, and then you can have the maths tool do some of the work for you. The maths tool is also available as a discrete tool online. So I'll show you where it is online first, and then I think I'll duck back over to the window that we've got Teams open in, and we'll show you it there. So first of all, if you want to get to the maths tool in isolation, you need to open up a web browser and then search online in that web browser for maths solver from Microsoft, and it will come up here. It can go all the way up to secondary level, and you can get some quite tricky calculations in there with algebra, trigonometry, but you can go right the way down to basic number, and you choose what you would like your calculator mode to be in. So the math solver is there, but if someone's struggling with what an answer might be to a problem, instead of you having to move around the classroom, what they could do is they could pop the calculation in here, and then you press solve, but it won't only just show them the answer, it will show them how they get to the answer. So you've got lots of different options available to you, and that's a free tool available in a web browser. But where it comes to life is really when you have it inside of OneNote. OneNote is a product that's available. It's like a bit like a digital pen and paper. You can get OneNote on its own, but what you can get is OneNote Class Notebook, and that's available in class teams. OneNote Class Notebook is a really snappy little tool that you can use for day-to-day teaching, and we've covered it on some of our previous sessions in Teams, but we'll focus on the maths tool in here. Now, if I got myself a blank page in my OneNote, so I'll just go into here, past the welcome note, and I'll find a section where I can add in a page. So if I go to my teachers only section, I go to maths, and then I'm going to add a new page in down here. So I'm using the online version of OneNote here. In fact, let's just use the one I've got there. That might save some time during the afternoon. You can see I've got a calculation in there, 7 plus 3 minus 2. And what you need to do first of all is use the lasso tool, which you should have selected by default, to highlight it, and you'll know when you've got all the text highlighted. So I've just written this on by having OneNote open on an interactive board in school, but if you've got a touch-enabled device at home with a stylus on it, whether it's a tablet or you've got a touchscreen laptop, you can do exactly the same. I've written that in there, and what I need to do now is I go to my View tab. No, I don't. I go to my Draw tab, and I pick up the Maths tool, and it's going to detect what I've just highlighted, and then the Maths tool will pick it up on the screen, and it will say, well, did you really mean for it to be 7 minus 3 minus 2? Well, no, it wasn't going to be 7 minus, it should be 7 plus 3 minus 2, and it's just detected there. Now, I can go to the Fix-It tool, and the Fix-It tool will then allow me to input operations that's picked up incorrectly, or digits it hasn't read correctly. But just to keep things speedy this afternoon, I won't go through the Fix-It tool, but down here you can go to Select Action. And then what I can do is I can evaluate what the answer was. Well, the answer would be 2, because if I've done 7 take away 3 and then also take away 2, it's going to leave 2 left. Well, that's good. It's helped me a little bit. I now know the answer, but it's pretty useless if I don't know how we got to that answer. And what you can do is you can use the maths tools here in the accessibility tools from Microsoft to help you manage your classroom, either in a distance learning scenario or a face-to-face if you've got some devices out in the classroom. You can go to Show Steps, and you can show the solution steps. There is the Immersive Reader icon again, the book with the little speaker on it. So I could have that read to me if I was a pupil. And actually, the barrier to learning was the language. It shouldn't be if I'm undertaking some maths work. So that's available to me there. But it takes me through, and it will either read it to me if I use Immersive Reader, or I can read through, and it shows me one way of how I got to the answer of 2. It is a computer and it's a program, so it won't know all of the methods that we've got in the national curriculum. But what it might do is it might help you you out in the classroom. And then at the end of that, if they've got to the answer, they can either self-generate a practice quiz, or you can generate a practice quiz, and this uses Microsoft Forms. And what it will do is it will come up and it'll ask me to sign in. And then it will say, well, how many questions do you want based on the calculation you've given me? So I'll say, well, I'd like 10 questions on that. And I regularly do this during lessons when I'm teaching. I'll say, generate a quiz. And then the accessibility tool, which is the maths tool here, will create me a quiz. It's live on screen, and the pupils can go to this page in my OneNote. They can have the individual questions read to them using the Immersive Reader. So there's our accessibility tool again. And then they can go through and they can evaluate what the answers are. What you can't do is you can't differentiate. You can't choose the level of challenge, but it will then use the original calculation or calculations to do that. And at the end, you can submit that back in the Microsoft form, and then the Microsoft form will self-mark that for you. And what you'll be able to do is spend your time focusing on getting around the classroom and being able to help other pupils or have interventions on small table groups, while some of the other pupils can manage to just get on with the activity, maybe a little bit of support of that. Could be good old textbook as well. But what you've got now is another tool in your arsenal to be able to solve that for you. Just swap over from the maths tool. So with the maths tools, are there any questions on those before I move across into another area? Okay, we'll swap screens while I have time to think about that. Next, we'll focus on communication skills and what accessibility tools Microsoft has for communication skills. Something that I find quite useful, but really, really useful with pupils of any age group, from primary right the way through to secondary. And I've also had quite a bit of success with this in colleges, in FE and HE. That people aren't natural presenters, and when you're not doing that on a daily basis, the quality of the information on your slides may be questionable, but also your delivery of that information might be. So you've got something called Presenter Coach in the accessibility tools. And what it does is it takes a predefined set of slides and allows you to present to them using the Presenter Coach. Again, this is available in the latest version of Offices, but you will be able to then run through the slide and you'll get some information back onto just how good your presentation was. Let's jump over and have a quick look at that in action. So I'll swap windows for you and we'll move into the online version of PowerPoint. Let's go for that one. So if I go back to Office, I'm going to open up PowerPoint there. Might be that I've got a staff meeting set of slides, so just load these up. These are loading up in PowerPoint Online. This is what I meant when it said it was a web app. Here's some slides I've got on a staff meeting. Let's try reloading that, and hopefully it won't have a problem. And what I can do is I can use the Presenter Coach built right in there to use the pacing and also the suggestions to improve what I'm doing. You find those on the slideshow tab, and the slideshow tab itself is just there. Is it going to work this afternoon? Let's have a look. Try one last time, otherwise I'll move over to another set of slides. No, let's go to a different set of slides. It looks like that one might not be playing ball. Let's move over to a different one. Here we go. Okay, so in this one here, I've, for instance, got a welcome back set of slides that I'm going to be using with pupils, and I'm going to start building in here the how was your home learning experience. So that's all well and good, but what I might want to do is have a run through once I've built them a bit further. So on the slideshow tab, if you've got the latest version of Office, there'll be Rehearse with Coach. And if you click Rehearse with Coach, it will take you into a PowerPoint presentation view. You'll need to allow access to the microphone on your computer, and for security reasons, you have to allow that. Once you've got that sorted out there, you'll get a little pop-up in the bottom of the window, and it'll say Start Rehearsing with Presenter Coach. You can say, okay, I'm ready to go. I've taken my deep breath. I know what I'm about to say, and it tells you down in the bottom left-hand corner your mic is ready and it's listening to you. So off we go. Welcome back to school this week. We've had quite a bit of time at home, and do you know what? It's been a really complicated situation. Sometimes we don't know what we're doing, and I might talk really fast because I've got so much to fit in and I've only got half an hour. So we'll quickly move on to the next slide. We might say, well, I don't know about the home learning and I'm not sure what's going on. And you start to get suggestions, as you can see, the pace is too fast or the pace is too slow. And at the end, when I press pause or I come out of the presentation, what I can do is exit the slideshow and I will get a dashboard. And on that dashboard, it will tell me time I spent presenting. It will give me some suggestions about pace. It will tell me overall of phrases I'm better to use, or how original something was, or the pitch of the presentation. So all of those are really useful tools, particularly for pupils in schools, to get them into the style of how to present confidently, but also how to make it interesting but not rushed. And it's at the moment available on the new version of Office, and it's in what's called preview mode, so they will be adding to it and developing it further in Microsoft, but it is a tool that you've got available that you can use today. So it's meant to make the slides more accessible for other people, because what you will do is make a better presentation based on what you've got in there, and practice it a few times before you are ready to go live with those other people. Now, PowerPoint Live is another tool that we've got available to us, and PowerPoint Live is another useful tool. So if I swap away from the slides I've just showed you and I move back over to the presentation for today, PowerPoint Live itself is a nifty little tool, but what it allows you to do is take your normal slides, and you've downloaded the app which I showed you earlier, which is the PowerPoint Live app. You put up a QR code on the screen in the classroom, or you put it up over a distance learning scenario, and then somebody scans it with their camera at home. And as you are speaking and presenting, it will give you subtitles underneath, or it will give you translated subtitles, and then that allows the person following at home, maybe they've got a visual impairment, but actually they can read subtitles perfectly well if they're enlarged and the slides text itself just doesn't work for them, or you can have those subtitles underneath. So it just makes that whole slide more accessible. What that looks like is on here. You can set it for other languages as well, so it might be that I want that to be in Spanish. So as I was busy talking in English and how the oceans work, it will be coming up on screen in the first language of the person joining here. And you've got up to 60 languages you can use within the Presenter Live tool, but you must have the latest version of Office to use that. Also, if you need to, there's the option to zoom in on a slide with that tool as well, so someone can zoom into the text if it was too small on screen for them, particularly if they're viewing this on a mobile device, and just see exactly what's going on. You can, if you wish as well, get rated on your presentation. So there's a tool in there to give audience feedback. So if you were doing some work, maybe with staff in school, or you're on some outreach for other school work, you can then ask people to submit on a scoring of clarity and content and so forth, and that feedback will come through to you. So you've got in there, you've got the designer tool that allows you to redesign slides. We haven't touched so much on that today because I wouldn't say it's necessarily an accessibility tool, but it's quite useful to mix things up and keep it interesting. If you have a few minutes, the designer tool will take the content of the slide you've got and it will reorganize it in a different way. Presenter Coach we've had a look at, and that's there for your new version of Office. But live presentations are something that came about quite recently, but they're very, very useful for you to make sure that you've got people who are able to follow you, and maybe they've got a learning need, or maybe they've just a AL pupil and they can get to that content. What we've also got coming, and this isn't in everyone's teams yet, which is why I'm going to use a video, you can have subtitles or annotated subtitles and captioning in Teams meetings. You will, if you've got it turned on, find in the 3 dots you can turn on captions, and then the captions will start to appear on screen in the language you select. It's one of those things at the moment, it's a bit hit and miss. Microsoft were going to roll it out and then they reined it back. And some people I know when I speak to schools have got captioning in their Office 365 and other people haven't got that available. Sometimes that's just because you're not lucky enough to have had that rolled out in your school yet and it's just random as to who gets it. Other times it will be that somebody who supports the IT in your school might need to go into what's called the Teams Admin Center and enable the feature in there. Another tool that we've got available to us is what's called the Translator Tool. So if I just stop sharing that screen for you a moment, the Translator Tool itself is really, really powerful and extremely useful. Translator itself is built into many pieces of software, including OneNote, but it is a dedicated app, and that dedicated app is something you can install on an Android phone or an iPhone, but it's available as a web app as well. So whichever device you are on, you're able to get in there and use it as a tool. The Translator Tool is one of those things that you can use for captioning PowerPoints. It can be also used for captioning the OneNotes. You can have a transcript that auto saves at the end. Itself as an app, you use QR codes again, and you can either have the person scanning a QR code or you can generate a QR code that can go on a slide either in OneNote or it can go onto PowerPoint slides. I'll show you what it looks like in real time in a minute, but it's pretty much universal regardless of what type of device you are using. It's got at the moment 10 speech languages available, but you've got 63 text languages available. The speech languages are being developed in priority order of most commonly spoken languages around the world. You can, as I said, use the feedback button, and you can have up to 100 participants on there at the same time, all listening to the translations in their own languages. So it's really useful if you've got a multicultural demographic of parents that send children to your school. You could use this translation tool to get them to all join the same open evening or live meeting, and they could all be using the Translator Tool to convert into their own language. When you join a conversation, it's the easiest way to do it is online. So I've seen people successfully do this with one-to-one meetings with a parent. I've seen it during live lessons. The web app itself is available in the internet, and I think it's probably a good point to jump over and show you what that looks like. Let's swap windows again. So quite a bit of moving around during this session because we're going between the presentation and the various different apps available on the screen. So if I jump back to where we were before and we swap over and go to the Translator Tool. If you go to translator.microsoft.com, that's where this web version is. I'll pop that into the chat as well for anyone that wants to go over there and pick up a copy and have a look for themselves. It will drop you straight into the online translation tool. It's also a good place to direct people to if you need them to get to it. Once they are there, they will be presented with this, and you need to find the two tabs. You either join a conversation and you have a conversation code, and I'll show you in a minute how to generate a conversation code. You pop in your name and you pop in your primary language, and you can either enter that meeting or you can start a conversation. But if you're starting a conversation, you need to log in with your Office 365 account or your Facebook account or your Google account. So it's pretty much open to any platform. I'm going to log in with my Microsoft account here. It'll take me through the sign-in process, and then all of a sudden I'm in there. I might have to say whether I'm using this in a classroom or not. I'm going to say in this fictional scenario, I am using this in a classroom. It gives me a slightly different view if I'm using it in a classroom and a slightly different set of tools. So I'm going to tick that. My name is Mr. Long, so I'm the teacher. My language that I'm speaking in is English. So if I go in, then I press enter, and then into the translation tool. And it will first of all bring up the QR code. I can download that QR code if I wish, and I can have it displaying in a bigger format, or I can pop out of it. And as you can see down here, it's using the microphone on my computer, and it's putting everything I'm saying into there. Now I'm speaking English, so it's showing in English, but if I'd said that I was going to be using a different language, that text will start coming up there in a different language. You can also have the ability to speak back, so that you can type a message in there, or you can then, for me, press it again and it starts listening. But if I don't want it to be listening to me, I can press it again and switch it off. So you can get participation from people on the other side, and you can use a space bar on your computer to speak, and you've also got the control on the screen. Now, I'm at the moment in presenter mode because I'm working in the classroom, but if I want to switch that presenter mode off, it's gone off there, and then that means that I'm just working on a one-to-one basis. You've got some options up there, so you can have it so the incomplete transcript hits a microphone display, or you can have it where you mute all other people. So if you want people to participate, you can turn that off. You can also lock the conversation so nobody else can contribute or nothing else goes in it. You can change the size of the font on screen, so if you know that you needed that font to be bigger. And at the end, if you need this transcript to be saved because you may have been using this for a one-to-one meeting with a parent and you want them to have a copy of it in their own language, you can save that transcript and it will download and it can be sent to them as evidence of the conversation you've had, particularly if you know that maybe when they leave they're going to question what's been said. If you want to get rid of all those options out of the way and just have that screen completely there, it's available for you. Now it's locked, so I've got the padlock up there, but that's the join code. So if I needed to give the join code to somebody because they couldn't scan the QR code, when you get to that join code screen, that's where they would enter that code, and then they'd come into this discussion with me, or in this instance they join my live lesson, so I'd give that to students. I'd normally put that code inside of a team because very often I've got my pupils working in a class team, and then I'll just put it in the posts and they can pick up that code from there. So Translator is pretty straightforward, whether you're using the app or whether you're using the web app, and it's available for you. It doesn't matter which version you're using. It's pretty much a universal experience. So as far as the accessibility tools we're covering today, Immersive Reader is universally applicable. It's so useful and has a massive impact regardless of what you're teaching, or as in the subject, or who you're teaching as in the age group. The other tools that we've got available to us will depend on what you're intending to do, what you want as your learning outcomes, and also your class best than the pupils. If you are struggling with translating languages, then the Microsoft Translator Tool built into Office 365, as you can see, is extremely powerful and useful for that. But at the same time, you've got things such as the Presenter Tool, you've got the Coach. The live captioning ties in with other languages in using the translation tool. You've got in OneNote class notebook, you've got the maths tool, but you don't forget you can have the maths tool on its own in the web browser. And if you have enabled captions as a feature in your Teams, you can have captions on screen in Teams, but as I've said, not everybody's got that. But the Office tool, the Office Lens tool, is really useful for either capturing text in a book and then translating it into live text that you can edit in another language, or capturing a piece of work in a pupil's book. They can capture that at home and get it back to you by either returning it in Teams or pasting it onto their page in OneNote class notebook. So those are the major accessibility tools that Microsoft have available to us. So have you got any questions regarding any of those tools at all? While you're thinking about that, I am just going to reshare the other screen and I'll give you the Microsoft Education Center code. As I said at the beginning, that code enables you to log into the Education Center. So once you're logged in, you can go to your initials in the top right hand corner and you go to the redeem code button, and then in that box there, and for people watching this after the event, this code will still be live. You type that code in and you'll be accredited with the 1,000 points to become a certified MIE, and it will also link you to the courses for accessibility. So that's something that we're going to give you because we're a global training partner with Microsoft, and I'll leave that on the screen while we take any questions and people go in and redeem that. So anything nobody wants to ask, either unmute your mic or you can type into the conversation.